Hello everyone, welcome back once again to Helldivers 2. Not too long ago, the Viper Commando Warbond dropped, and with it came a large patch to overhaul a fair number of weapons and stratagems. So the Brain Trust and I promptly got together and started digging into it to see what state our favorite and least favorite weapons were in. This put us on the topic of which Warbond was the best, and consequently which was the worst. So I thought I'd share our thoughts here to help new players have a better understanding of the Warbond mechanic and what they should focus on, or maybe help some of the more casual players who might not have the time to go through patch notes and test all the newly modified weapons. Admittedly, there's a bit of subjectivity to this. People are going to have their preferences, and those preferences are going to be affected by playstyle. I should also note that emotes, finishing poses, capes, helmets, and super credits aren't going to factor into this. Likewise, armor is only mildly going to factor in. Once you've got all the different passives, there's no real rush to buy any more of them. So what we're focusing on are items that affect combat. Also keep in mind that Warbonds can be unlocked in any order, and that the order the Warbonds were released in no way indicates any type of progression, sadly. What I mean by that is that the most recent Warbond is not necessarily any better than any of the Warbonds that came before it. Some Warbonds added some really great stuff, but others, not so much. On that note, let's rank some Warbonds. Currently, we've got a total of 6 Warbonds to choose from. Let's start with the one everyone has access to by default, Helldivers Mobilize. Despite being the starting Warbond, this one actually has a lot going for it. It's also got more pages than any other Warbond, with 10 pages of gear rather than the 3 pages that have been on all the subsequent Warbonds. And there's a lot of stuff worth getting here. Some just as early upgrades to beginning gear, and some a little bit more lasting. And for the purposes of this review, we're going to focus on the must-haves, and then the stuff that you can skip. Anything that I don't mention, you can consider to be just okay and suitable as an upgrade to starter gear, but something that can be easily replaced by something much better. The must-haves on Helldivers Mobilize is going to be the Hellpod Space Optimization Booster on page 3, and the Stamina Enhancement Booster on page 7. Also on page 7 is the only armor I'm going to mention, the Trailblazer Scout Armor, which is one of the only 2 armor sets in the game that boasts the Scout passive, which reduces your enemy detection by 30% on the fastest light armor, making it easy to get around the map. Honorable mentions here are the Breaker Shotgun or the Impact Grenades on page 5. Page 8 has Smoke Grenades, but while they're handy, they're definitely not a must. Lastly, on page 10, you've got the Scorcher, which is an energy AR that drops automatons with ease. That said, it's not great against bugs due to its splash damage, which will often kill you as much as it kills them. So my suggestion for Helldivers Mobilize is to at least reach page 7 before heading off to another Warbond. Now, if ranking were based on the amount of content, Helldivers Mobilize would be at the top, hands down. That said, it isn't home to any of the top equipment apart from the Trailblazer Scout Armor. But you can get the same armor with a different skin from the Polar Patriots Warbond, so on Helldivers Mobilize it's really just the look that you're going for. And it's also got a lot of equipment that I'd call meh, or just outright crap. The Frag Grenade, the Defender Submachine Gun, the Scythe Laser Assault Rifle, the UAV Recon Booster, the Diligence Counter Sniper Marksman Rifle, and the Increased Reinforcement Budget Booster are all not great, and only find minimal utility as early upgrades. As far as the outright crap goes, we've got the Diligence Marksman Rifle. You can skip that, and if I'm being honest, you can skip this Counter Sniper too. Everything those can do can be done just as well by something else. All in all, Helldivers Mobilize is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other with regard to solid gear versus crap. That said, we're ranking this Warbond at number 2. Next up is going to be Steeled Veterans. Here, the must-have is the Incendiary Breaker on page 2. It's the undisputed king of shotguns and indiscriminate fire. The Senator Pistol and Incendiary Grenades are also pretty solid. And you can skip the Flexible Reinforcement Booster, which sounds good on paper, but ends up being total crap, as its influence on the reinforcement timer is minimal, And on top of that, just like the reinforcement booster that we just discussed with Helldivers Mobilize, you have to blow through all your reinforcements before these do anything for you. So early on, when you're finding your footing, they might help you a little bit, but once you start getting a feel for the game and you figure out what works for you, these aren't going to do anything for you. Steeled Veterans is a solid choice for your first Warbond after Helldivers Mobilize. To sum up, if you like laying waste to enemies, and squad mates alike, then the Breaker Incendiary is right up your alley. And if that's the case, you can consider Steeled Veterans to be number 1 on this ranking. Alright, Cutting Edge was the first post-release Warbond, and while it did give us a way to negate arc damage with its armor passives, that ended up being pretty niche. Cutting Edge doesn't have any must-have. Its claim to fame was the Sickle, an energy-based AR which operates on a heat sink rather than clips or slugs, effectively making it an infinite ammo weapon. As far as assault rifles go, it's near the top, but as the assault rifles in this game are limited almost exclusively to trash clearing and or TKing your squad, that's not saying much. Cutting Edge also gave us stun grenades, which are actually pretty solid. The Punisher Plasma Shotgun was, as I recall, pretty well received initially. While it was never one that I cared for, I remember hearing a lot of positive buzz. So it was promptly nerfed. The Localization Confusion Booster sounds like it should be awesome, and while it doesn't do nothing, what it does do is almost undetectable, making it a weak addition unless it's all you've got to bring to the party. The Blitzer looks pretty cool, and I've heard people singing its praises, but for the life of me, I can't see why. The only thing it's ever done for me or my partners in crime is consistently leave the enemies alive. Last and definitely least is the Dagger Energy Pistol. Like the Sickle, it's heat-based, so theoretically it's infinite ammo, and that's its only plus. Skip it until you're just filling out the Warbond once you have everything else. Overall, this Warbond was pretty lackluster, and we're putting it as the worst of what we've gotten so far. Next on the list is the Democratic Detonation Warbond, my personal favorite. This Warbond boasts 2 must-haves: the Eruptor, which is an explosive assault rifle, and the Grenade Pistol. Both of these sacrifice DPS for explosive versatility. You won't kill as well as someone running some of the higher rate of fire weapons, but the AoEs here make up for it. You're trading outright damage for the ability to destroy bug holes, bot factories, other secondary objectives, opening containers for loot, all of which typically require grenades of varying strengths or stratagems to deal with. The explosive crossbow isn't quite as good as the Eruptor, but boasts similar versatility while also being one of the few weapons in Helldivers 2 that have a low to non-existent sound profile, meaning you can do a little bit of stealth work with the enemies. The Expert Extraction Pilot Booster is also a solid addition, taking up to 30 seconds off the extraction timer. On the weaker end, we've got the Thermite Grenades, which while I find them to be pretty solid, most view them as just okay and a little gimmicky. Lastly, the Adjudicator Assault Rifle, which just got buffed, is still nothing to write home about. That said, this Warbond is solid. And if, like me, you tend to spend your mission time knocking out objectives and getting the mission done while your squad mates sate their bloodlust and seek out POIs, then your first stop after Helldivers Mobilize should be Democratic Detonation. For that reason, we're ranking this as a tie for number 1 with Steeled Veterans. The deciding factor between the two is going to depend on the player and their playstyle. Polar Patriots was next, and I'm pretty sure this was panned out the gate. At the time of release, its only attraction was the Incendiary Impact Grenades, and a new skin option for the Trailblazer Scout, which doesn't actually count towards anything in the ranking. Everything else was likewise a redressing of what we already had, but none of it good. Arrowhead addressed this a little bit recently with the Viper Commandos patch. The Tenderizer, which was the assault rifle that came with this Warbond, got some nice TLC and is actually pretty fun to use now. And with its scope boasting 3 ranges, it becomes just another reason to never have to use either of the marksman rifles. The Motivational Shocks Booster isn't bad either, but there are others that are better. As far as the rest of the Polar Patriot weapons go, the Pummeler for me was a definite meh, but the Brain Trust lobbied for it to be placed mid-tier. While it's definitely top for the submachine guns, the submachine guns are only good for objectives where you have to carry something. In a pure comparison, all the SMGs are worse than the assault rifles, and given that the assault rifles, as I've mentioned, have minimal utility on higher difficulties, that should put the SMGs in perspective. The Purifier might have been worth using if it had a normal rate of fire with the ability to hold the trigger for more damage, but it doesn't, and it's not. So you can skip that, and the Verdict pistol as well until you've got nothing left to buy. Prior to the Viper Commandos patch, I don't think anyone would have objected to putting Polar Patriots at the bottom of this list. But with the Tenderizer moving up 2 spots from meh to very good, this Warbond slots in between Helldivers Mobilize and Cutting Edge. And now, here we are at the newest installment, the Viper Commandos Warbond. This one is a bit of a mixed bag. They're trying to focus on quality over quantity, which is good. But with this Warbond focusing more on cosmetic customization than weaponry, there's no real guarantee that we're going to get the quality that we're waiting for. The armors offer a new passive set, which is cool, like Cutting Edge did, and the weapon handling part of that is actually pretty cool, offering swifter movement while aiming. But the melee buff, currently it's more or less wasted. We don't have any melee weapons yet to pair with it, so it's not really doing much for us outside of the stock melee attack, which isn't great. The star of the show here is actually the booster. Experimental Infusion goes in the must-have category, hands down. Adding damage resistance and run speed to stim effects is awesome. And as you can see in this clip, the damage reduction is pretty sweet. Sadly, this almost guarantees we'll see it nerfed really soon. But until then, it's a must-have. The Bushwhacker shotgun is my new favorite secondary weapon, and it's been pretty well received. The Liberator carbine, on the other hand, is just more of the same for the underwhelming assault rifles. The Tenderizer is going to be a better pick if you're looking for one. Lastly, the throwing knives, the weapon we were all curious about. They're a gimmick, plain and simple. Taking your grenade slot, they allow you to stealth kill some of the lower tier enemies, but seem to do very little once armor gets in the mix. On top of that, the fact that they apparently do more damage than a single shot from most of the available arsenal, that just furthers my belief that Arrowhead doesn't know what balance is or how to achieve it, despite their many patches. To that end, we're putting Viper Commandos as the second to last. While the Experimental Infusion Booster is a definite must-have, this Warbond simply doesn't bring enough to the table to merit being ranked any higher. Well, there you have it, folks. That's our 2 cents on the Warbonds. Hopefully, if you're new to the game or trying to figure stuff out, this has helped you somewhat. And if you're a vet to this game, how did we do? Did we rank it how you would have? What would you have changed? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.